Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where I've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains episode 19. That's right, we're back. And let's get straight into the top 5 takes here. What an episode. We had a head-to-head showdown between the King and Queen, Hayley and George going up against each other. In some ways, it kind of felt strange because I almost felt like the Shawnee versus George episode was the real epic showdown of this season. Just the way that that episode was sort of set with the music and the suspense and feeling like it's this big horror movie that George was going after his close spy school and the game. It was just a different tone to that episode compared to this one, and in some ways I felt a little bit let down because we know the history between Hayley and George. We know that they're friends in real life. We know that coming into this game, George really wanted to play with her, but overall, still a very, very good episode. Now, takeaway number 1, we go straight back to camp. We have the aftermath of the Sean vote. George is furious. He knows somebody has turned against his alliance, and you know he's going to leave no stone unturned when it comes to trying to find out who the mole in the game is. And Hayley maybe should go play the mole, or I don't know after this episode if they would accept her, because she does ultimately get caught, but she stays quiet like a mouse on the sidelines while he goes after Nina. And he says, Nina, you betrayed us, we know it's you, and not for a second did he suspect that his real-life friend Hayley would ever turn against him in the game. Nina ends up walking away from camp, talking to Hayley separately, saying, hey Hayley, can we talk? She immediately calls Hayley out, and she says, I know you're the one who did it. And Hayley in this moment says, sorry, I'm not going to confess to it, I know it's bringing heat your way, but deal with it. Basically, and I feel like this is the point where Hayley lost Nina. Maybe she should have spent a little bit of extra time saying, I really want to play with you. It sucks that the heat is coming your way, but if he still trusts me at this point, we can work together. I can get vital information that may allow us to do a blindside on George in this game. And if she let her in on the plan from the start, maybe there could have been some trust there, and she could have pointed back to the fact, listen, when I told you to play the idol for Sam, I was already trying to reach out to you. That was an olive branch. You know my word is good. I want to work with you in the game. But she kind of made Nina feel isolated and like she was on this island on her own and that there was no option for her but to turn on Hayley in the game. So I think a little bit of cracks in the game of Hayley was starting to show at this point. Lastly, before we move on to takeaway number 2, Nina talks to George separately and she says, listen, Hayley told us about the 60k that you won in the game already. She's not your friend. She's coming after you in the game, which immediately makes George realize that he's backing the wrong horse in the race and that he needs to amend his game and that Hayley is coming after him. And this is when the realization kicks in that that friendship that they have in real life may not mean anything when they're playing the game of Survivor. I do think that if Hayley did not betray him, he would have gone to the end all the way with Hayley. He would have been loyal to the core, to that real life friendship, but because she turned on him first, it gives him the permission to go after him. And at this stage, you know, King George has got all the pawns in the world to make it happen, while Queen Hayley is sitting out in the cold because she has not really had an alliance throughout this whole game. Alright, let's get into takeaway number 2. Liz wins the reward challenge and she chooses to take George and Nina on the reward challenge with her. Now, we know that when you're out there playing Survivor, it can be a big risk to only take your friends in the game. So I really like this move by Liz because she left both Matt and Jerry at camp, who are two people who are loyal to the core, who's not going to turn against their alliance, and she took Nina as a wild card, someone that they could try and bring into the alliance late to be an additional number to go after the Queen Hayley in this game. And when they get to the reward challenge, they have this conversation. They come up with a plan on how they're going to go after Hayley. And they say that they're going to stage that there was a fight at this reward challenge, that Liz was over all of it and she was tired, and that Nina and George could not see eye to eye. And Nina ultimately would accept that she was the person, or would admit that she was the person who did place that vote on Sean. So at this point, Nina is starting to dine with the devil. She is now playing with someone that she's never wanted to play with in the game, in George, and due to this, Hayley is completely snowed by the time they get back to camp. Moving on to takeaway number 3, Simon keeps fumbling in this game when it comes to strategy. While at camp and with the others away on this reward, he goes and talks to both Matt and Jerry, who are both close to the opportunity or possibility to work with him in this game. And he says, if you don't take out George, you're not going to win, because at the moment you're doing everything he wants. Strategically, he is running the game, and Jerry does let it drop or let it slip at that point and says, at this point he is, yes. So it does show us that Jerry and Matt may turn against him, but are they waiting too long before they do that? That is the big question. On the podcast that we did last week, we spoke about the fact that most people probably isn't afraid to take George to a Final Four, Final Three situation where they can beat him at challenges. So maybe that is something that they're still thinking, that if they do get that late in the game, they win the immunity and they vote George out before he gets to the end, because they don't seem too concerned that they're going to be sitting next to this guy who has got a resume bigger than anybody else in the game at this point. Also in this specific episode, even though Simon doesn't do too good at the strategy game, he continues to dominate at the physical game, and I had myself fist pumping in the air. I was so happy when Simon won this immunity challenge, because, you know, this is supposed to be an individual immunity challenge, but we see Liz helping out Matt in the scenario to try and get Simon to lose this immunity challenge. And, you know, JLP says it's within the rules, everybody can do it. So what is preventing future players from going out there and getting alliances to just team up against the poor person who's on the outside? I thought this was the way we kept underdogs in the game, the people who were outcasts and couldn't find their tribe. This is a way for them to still win power in the game and keep themselves safe. Are we just going to allow people to gang up on the person that is on the outside? I know this is Survivor and all is fair in love and war, but I do want to see people stick to the theme of individual immunity, not team immunity or working against people in this spot. So I was so happy that Simon was able to beat both Liz and Matt in this challenge and ultimately win this immunity, keeping him safe in this episode. Okay, going into takeaway number 4 here, Hayley's big move in the game turns out to flop right in her face. She knew that she needed to go up against George to take him out if she wanted to win the game. That was her perception of the game that George has played up until this point. I still believe that if she did get to the end somehow and talked about the fact that she had this big threat level coming into the game as a winner, as somebody that won in a very respectful way when she was out there the first time, she had to play with whatever means necessary to get to the end, and that was playing with George. I think that would have been a better move. I even think she could have been jumping on George's backside for this whole season, allowed him to be the strategic force, make all these moves, and then just beat him at the final immunity challenge and cut him there. So I think she made a gross miscalculation trying to go against him this early in the game. I don't think he was coming after her. I think he valued her friendship way too much, and he truly wanted to sit next to her in the game. So the fact that she turned against him here, for the second time she goes up against George in the game, and strategically for the second time George votes her out of the game, once again showing that George's strategy and the way that his brain works, maybe he's not the same all-rounded player that Hayley is in the game, but strategically he is ahead of her. You know, he can vote her out of the game. The previous time when she came back from Redemption Rock, she played with him, not against him, because she realized he was a force in the game. Yes, she didn't mind sitting next to him because she knew she could beat him at the end, but I also think she didn't strategically want to go up against him for a second time in that season after being voted out. So she didn't learn her lesson that season. She came up against him in this season and again was found short. She tries to work with Simon, who clearly isn't the best strategic player out there, and she tries to work with Nina to try and get ahead in the game. Now, if this did work out in their favor, I do think Hayley had a better chance at winning, and you can argue the counter argument that if you're out there playing with house money like Hayley was, then maybe it doesn't matter. The fact that, you know, you're out there again playing the game, take out the biggest threats, make sure you've got the best chance at winning. So I can definitely see both sides of the argument, and I'm sure fans are going to be debating for a very long time if Hayley made the right move or not. But I do want to get into another person who I think made an even bigger mistake this episode than Hayley, and that's takeaway number 5. Did Nina make the right move in this scenario? They had 4 votes together, with Nina's vote going on to Hayley, making it a sure thing that Hayley was out of this game. But Nina had another option in the game. She could have worked with both Simon and Hayley to go up against George. She could have had 3 v3 in the votes, which obviously would have meant they would have gone to rocks potentially in this game. It would have been interesting to see if they could flip someone at that point, like a Matt, maybe, or a Liz. Like, was Matt or Liz really going to sacrifice their game for George in this specific spot? And it could have taken power away from that core group of 4 players, which in my mind is Matt, Jerry, Liz, and George. I don't think Nina's got wiggle room to get any further than maybe 5th in this specific spot in the game. So I feel like she's very much still on the outside. So if you're not winning, if you're not first, you're last. So did Nina make the right decision in this specific episode not to jump on board with Hayley's plan? I can see how Hayley is to blame for the fact that Nina didn't want to work with her, but I can also see Nina maybe just being a bit emotional about the fact she was being thrown under the bus here and maybe not thinking clearly at this point that she needs to take out George or weaken George's alliance in the game so that they can have more agency. Because I think if Nina sits next to Hayley and if she sits next to Simon at the end game, believe it or not, I think she's got a very good shot at winning this game. I don't know if the same can be said with the alliance that she's jumped on to really late in this game, where she's clearly the number that is on the outside. In any case, that's my top 5 takes here for episode 19. If you do enjoy this content, please do me a huge favor. Subscribe to this channel, hit a like on this, put on the notification bell so you can know when we go live and we discuss the episodes in further detail. And be sure to check out the content that we've already dropped on this channel. We've also got Survivor 44 content at the moment. We had Omar from Survivor 42 on the recent podcast as well. It was so much fun. We've got Mike Turner, Survivor Season 42 coming on as well. So plenty of guests dropping in over the coming weeks as well. So please check that out. Thank you so much for checking this out. For now, grab your torches, head back to camp, and I'll catch you guys next time when I talk about episode 20.